Thank you so much. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Paige Dhyne, and on behalf of the ACRL Science and Technology Section Information Literacy Chat Subcommittee, I want to welcome you to today's webinar entitled Citizen Science Projects and Partnerships in Academia, presented by our guest speaker, Megan Carlton. A few notes before we get started. Again, I want to make you aware that this webinar is being recorded and that recording will be made available at a later date via ACRL. And there will be some chances to ask questions. If you type them in the chat, I will ask them on your behalf at the end of the webinar, just to make sure that we end on time and Megan can get through her whole presentation. So without further ado, I am pleased to virtually introduce Megan Carlton. Megan is the science librarian at UNC Greensboro and liaison to the STEM departments. She holds an animal science degree from Middle Tennessee State University, and a master's degree in library and information science from the University of Tennessee. Megan lives with her husband, 2 daughters, and 3 dogs, whom she is hoping you won't hear in the background during this session. But without further ado, let's all welcome Megan. And Megan, please take us away.
Well, hi, everybody. Again, I'm Megan, and I hope everybody else is adjusting to not having your normal computer monitors in front of you. So if it takes me a second to get things switched over, it's because I have too many windows open on my small laptop. But I just wanted to start out, well, this is not going to be a Zoom poll because I don't have that functionality in this meeting, but I just wanted to ask a couple questions to see kind of who I'm talking to and what material I can kind of breeze through quickly. So if you can, I'd like to see just how many people by the raise hand function next to your participant name, just how many people have heard of citizen science? Awesome. So it looks like well over half. So maybe a couple people that are still newer to the concept, which is great because you're about to be obsessed also. And just slap those hands down. And then my next question, I guess, to those of you who have heard of it, how many of y'all have participated in a citizen science project? Awesome. So a little bit lower on that end. I guess y'all can see who's raising each other's hands. I like the poll feature where you can see what percentage and stuff. Okay, so with that, I'm going to get started by just a very brief intro to what citizen science is. So according to Webster, it is just scientific work undertaken by members of the general public, often in collaboration with or under the direction of professional scientists in scientific institutions. But more generally, because that is definitely a mouthful, is that it's public participation in scientific research. But it can really be so much more than that. I mean, that definition doesn't really encompass everything that it can be. So it's really an invitation to everybody to participate in real science on topics that they care about. Since I am an animal lover, most of the things that I'm involved in involve a lot of biodiversity, and those are the ones that I really get excited about. But to other people, there's even projects for history buffs and people who want to look at historical maybe notes or historical weather data. There's so many different projects out there where everybody can find something that they're interested in. So since this participation can take so many different forms, to help people kind of understand how citizens can really contribute in huge ways, I always like to kind of talk about the story of the Sloan Digital Sky Survey. So, I'm sorry, I'm gonna try to slow down. So the SDSS created the most detailed 3-dimensional maps of the universe that's ever been made. They have it of multicolor images of about 1/3 of the sky and spectra for more than 3 million astronomical objects. So the volumes of information being collected are just staggering. And the future of these projects promise data sets that are just ever increasing in size. Their new survey telescope that will begin operation in 2022, that camera will be able to collect 15 to 30 terabytes of data every single night. So with such huge volumes of data, there's obviously a very high need to have the ability to handle that data. The initial images of about 900,000 galaxies from SDSS were being classified by just a handful of people at Oxford, including a graduate student, Chris Lintott. So Lintott calculated that one graduate student classifying images for 12 hours per day could only complete about 50,000 of these images over 1 month. So he also realized, though, that it didn't take years and years of studying to be an astrophysicist to recognize a galaxy's type by its shape and structure, that it really only took a little bit of practice, and that anyone from school children to retirees could really do this. So instead of subjecting one person to such a huge task, or a team of people, what if this task could be distributed to volunteers? So in 2007, Lintott developed Galaxy Zoo, and he called upon volunteers to look at digital images of galaxies from the SDSS and classify them as spirals, ellipticals, or mergers. And when Galaxy Zoo launched, participants classified 70,000 galaxies per hour in those first days and 50 million in the first year. And so after 13 years now, Galaxy Zoo is still up and running, and you can still participate in this project today. And so when you're classifying these galaxies, this image on the left is what you're being asked to do. So this citizen science and public participation in research is not a new concept. I'm only going to tell you about a couple of key projects, just to keep it brief. But lighthouse keepers begin collecting data about bird strikes as long ago as 1880, and the National Audubon Society started its annual Christmas bird count in 1900, which you can still do today. I missed the Christmas bird count this year, but I did the Great Backyard Bird Count, which is in March. And then in 1992, the NSF funded a series of projects through Cornell called Public Participation in Ornithology that still continues today. And they have tons of great projects available to all types of birders. In case you don't know what ornithology is, it's just the study of birds. So with that very brief history, I'll now backtrack a little bit and give you a little bit more details about my journey into citizen science, just so you can see, where I'm coming from, and that I'm still on the newer side of this. I'm still learning a lot every day, but just to kind of give you my, kind of be able to trace my steps and how I've brought this into my work life. So I discovered Zooniverse about a year ago, and this was kind of the gateway into iNaturalist and so many other projects. But after seeing some of these projects, I wanted to get my children and all their neighborhood friends and everything kind of involved doing the same thing. So we started, oh, see the chat, I gotta close that. I know, iNaturalist is awesome. I'm sorry. Okay. See, I can't even look at the chat right now. So I started getting all the neighborhood kids involved in Eco Explore, and that's a statewide project here in North Carolina. It's funded out of the North Carolina Arboretum. And so they upload all of their data to iNaturalist, but it's geared more towards that under 13 years old, because you have to be 13 to use iNaturalist, but they still wanted younger kids to be able to be involved. So they have an app and website and events across the state that all of these kids can get involved in. And they even have prizes at libraries where you can accumulate points and go and cash those in. And then the libraries will also have kits that children can check out if they want to, if they need a little help, catching butterflies to take pictures of and things like that. They have some tools that can help you earn more points on EcoExplore. So then I've also been working with a Girl Scout troop here locally to pick projects on SciStarter and kind of give them an intro to citizen science and what that is. And so now they're working on a citizen science badge, and I'm working on how I can help them virtually kind of take a field trip outside and look at nature together. So since starting here at UNCG, so I've been here now only about a year and a half, or almost a year and a half. I also met the creator of the Box Turtle Connection, and that is a big citizen science project that's it's a national project, but their focus has really been around North Carolina and the box turtles in the area. But once I met her and she signed the book that she wrote and everything, I was super excited just being a librarian to have that. But I've also started working with her on how to become a project leader with the Box Turtle Connection. So I really, of course, wanted to find a way to kind of merge this obsession with my job. And so every time I walked across campus to different meetings, I would take pictures of whatever wildlife I saw and just start adding it to iNaturalist. So as I was doing this, I noticed that there were a couple of camera trap pictures that were uploaded near one of the wetlands on campus from like 5 years ago. And it looked like someone had struggled to figure out this system because they had added several of the same pictures with no real context. And then they had given up because there were no more pictures added after this time period. So since I was still new at UNCG, it took me a little while to track down the researcher who had this camera trap. And luckily, when I did find him, he was still engaged in that project. So when I met up with him to talk about his research, it seemed to be exactly the type that would benefit the most from citizen science. I mean, the camera traps, which I'll talk about more in a little bit more detail, really produce a lot of data and can also be really fun and engaging to citizens, to the community to engage with. So I started by just showing him Zooniverse and some of the projects that are on there, and just talked about how it worked. And, you know, he had questions about, well, the accuracy, and then how do I set up this project and things. And in the fall, I met with his lab team to talk about how we could set up our project on, I guess initially we were interested in setting it up on Zooniverse because at the time that was the platform that I was most familiar with. So these conversations have also led to an interest from an instructor in the biology department that teaches the non-major biology course. And this instructor initially just loved the idea of including these projects to kind of induce excitement and engagement from his students while still teaching them about the process of science. And then in the last weeks, I've also been working with our landscape ecology professor, and he is requesting that the library order some zoom lens attachments for cell phones so that his students will be able to document squirrels for a citizen science project. So these conversations that I've had, they all seem to have common challenges. And so that's really what I wanted to talk about today and get feedback today from others who have had the same experiences or similar ones, and what other challenges we might need to be prepared for. So of course, the first challenge is really understanding what these citizen science projects can do and what their benefits are for the students or the faculty. And, you know, just getting this buy-in from them and having them realize that their time is actually worth it. It's worth the time to set up these projects or to integrate them into your classes. So the second challenge that I have is just the details of how to really integrate these projects into the classroom, such as how does it work and where do I even start? You know, I get a lot of these questions. And then again, with the accuracy, they want to know that these projects are actually giving them data that they can use and that they can publish. So those are the three big things I'm going to talk about. And again, I really want to have a conversation and would love to hear other ideas and similar stories. So this first challenge, communicating, just what it is and how it can benefit students. So the benefits of engaging K through 12 students in science learning with these projects is really well recognized. I mean, it's easy to see that link between the nature of scientific inquiry and how these projects can fill that gap. But several authors have argued that inquiry-based learning is also important at the undergraduate level because students often enter college without this experience, and because inquiry-based learning is valuable for college students regardless of their background. So in general, this type of learning involves a departure from education focused solely on content and instead promotes engagement with the processes of science. So this encourages students to pose questions, generate and analyze data, draw conclusions, and then communicate their findings. And I think that's a big draw for faculty, is for students to really just engage with that process. Is more important than any facts they could read out of a textbook, which they need to know, but it's more important just to understand those processes. So additionally, since many citizen science programs are managed by university researchers, this connection facilitates involvement of undergrad students in project design, data collection, data management, and independent research. So these projects can also provide an excellent platform for accessibility of experiential learning opportunities for a broad range of non-major science students, and especially at institutions with limited resources such as community colleges. These experiences can show students the relevance of science to their own lives and really promote a science literate workforce and a science literate public. And just as a side note, because of what benefit this has just to the general public, there's really a lot of grant funding out there for this. And also, this can inspire diverse students to pursue science careers. One study found that this is especially true among women, first-generation students, and non-white students enrolled in community colleges that may have had limited exposure to the sciences. So the next challenge seems to be finding simple ways to kind of start using projects and courses. For some faculty, there's a concern of having enough time during the semester to complete all of these course objectives and to cover all the course content. So embedding inquiry-based activities into the introductory level classroom requires a lot of in-class time, from introducing the activity and then the students carrying out the activity, exercises and completing the analysis, and dissemination. Faculty seem to want to try this out before they really put a lot of effort into it and until they know how it'll work for them. So the greatest tool in my arsenal has really been examples. Every time I have conversations with faculty and they seem like they may be interested in it, I send them a paper that has, either a similar topic or a similar course structure, course objectives. I like to find a paper to send them to follow up on that has examples of how they could do this easily. So let's see. So these projects are often site or species specific. So similar projects can help instructors kind of visualize what could be done. So don't worry about, if you can't find a project that fits this microbiology class to a T, because if you found something similar, they could still kind of visualize, oh, okay, well, it could look like this. And then, or if there's a project out there that is completely relevant that may not have all of the materials published, just having something similar to see can be very helpful. So A lot of these projects, there's also an opportunity to access data that's already in the database. So they can use that for kind of a global comparison. And this can scale up the project in its rigor and expectations for synthesis and evaluation of data. So a great example, and I really wanted to highlight a lot of these because there's so many great ones out there, but this one was just very simple and very easy for instructors to kind of see how they can incorporate a project into their class. So this one is from a microbiology lecture course at Roane State Community College. And to generate, I'm sorry, I guess I could go back a little. I'm sorry. So the professor started by just creating a list of projects that the students could choose from. So to create this list, and she details this in her paper, but she used SciStarter, which I'll talk about as well. It's a great platform that's similar to Zooniverse, but has everything in it. But she sorted through over 800 different projects on SciStarter and limited these projects down to projects that were relevant to the students' majors. In this course, she had a lot of allied health majors, and also that had something to do with microbiology course topics. And then she wanted projects that could be conducted entirely online and that involved a limited time investments. So students were required to spend a minimum of 3 hours participating in their chosen citizen science project. And in addition, they were instructed to record thorough notes on the activities, take screenshots of the project in progress, and then turn it in with their final report as kind of verification that they did actively participate. She also set aside 2 lecture periods to give students scheduled time to work on their projects and then access campus resources that were related. So these additional resources they used to create a kind of mini science report that required a lot of background stuff, and then just to overall evaluate the project that they had worked on. So I love this example also, and a lot of these papers will have this because it will include classroom resources. So this is the actual assignment for that microbiology class that was included in the appendix of the article. She also included her initial list of what projects were available that met her criteria. And then once professors see this and they see that a lot of these educational materials are already created, they can usually see that this will kind of take off of their workload a little bit, and they'll be more apt to include it into their courses. So a really big thing that you'll see a lot of in citizen science projects, and really a game changer in this world of research, has been camera traps. A camera trap is a remotely activated camera that is equipped with like a motion sensor or an infrared sensor, or it might use a light beam, something to trigger that camera to take pictures. So this is a method that's used for capturing wild animals on film when the researchers are not present. And it's been used in ecological research for decades. So in addition to applications in hunting and wildlife viewing, research applications include studies of nest ecology, detection of rare species, estimations of population size and species richness, as well as research on habitat use and occupation of human-built structures. Camera traps have become, again, very widely used in citizen science projects, surveying medium to large size animals, in which citizens or researchers are trained to use the cameras, operate GPS units, and download pictures collected by the cameras. Using cameras in the field can allow the scope of the study to really greatly expand in geographic area. And because they're non-invasive, they're easily operated, they don't really require extensive training, they really represent an excellent tool for incorporating both citizen science and undergraduate students in research opportunities in which the data that they collect will actually be used for research and analysis. For undergraduate students seeking opportunities in wildlife research, camera traps are able to expose students to wildlife ecology and behavior without them having to receive training on how to safely trap and handle species, how to deploy GPS collars, or how to immobilize species. So these students can really be left in the field unsupervised, which reduces the time commitments by faculty researchers that would otherwise be required if the student was involved in trapping wildlife. So after using camera traps to survey species presence or absence, the data can be used can be sent to state or federal agencies to target management of species, or if there's concerns about threatened or endangered wildlife, or even invasive exotic species. So the camera trap, again, has really been a game changer and is a focus of a lot of citizen science projects, because this technology produces so much data. It's limited by the human processing capacity. So engaging citizen science to classify these images can increase the amount of information that researchers can extract from these large data sets. So on Snapshot Serengeti, which is another one of my favorites that's on Zooniverse, that I like to get the kids involved in, because they, you never know what picture's coming up, and they like seeing the different wildlife in Africa. So on this project, members of the general public viewed and classified images from a large-scale camera survey in Serengeti National Park. So Snapshot Serengeti provides a case study in engaging citizen scientists in rapidly and accurately processing large volumes of ecological imagery. To keep pace with high volume data production, conservationists often just resort to classifying only the images that contain their target species. So they, if they're having to go through these pictures themselves, or their research team and they're studying elephants, they're only going to look at the pictures of elephants and kind of throw out every other image that doesn't contain an elephant. So, by discarding all of this data, this data could otherwise be used for really multi-species monitoring. So by engaging citizen scientists in this processing of every single image, and limiting expert review to only those photos with kind of low certainty scores, multi-species camera surveys could dramatically expand the scope of conservation monitoring. So this article that was written by Swanson and others about the Serengeti project is really a great example of accuracy, because they had so much data, and this project has been going on for years and really gone through so many images. They have a lot of material to work with and do a lot of math that I didn't necessarily understand about the accuracy. I picked up bits, but there's lots of details if anybody's into that and wants to go find this article and read it. But unlike many other citizen science projects, Snapshot Serengeti volunteers were neither trained nor required to demonstrate species identification skills. Instead, they engaged multiple volunteers for every task and aggregated their answers to produce highly accurate data. Snapshot Serengeti data was 97.9% accurate overall, whereas 85 to 95% accuracy is reported for most projects engaging trained volunteers. Aggregating multiple answers was crucial in providing these high rates of accuracy for Snapshot Serengeti. having multiple people classify an image was more reliable than a single person, even when that person was an expert. So, experts can make mistakes. A single field researcher flipping through hundreds or thousands of photographs can become fatigued and miss a species or click on the wrong classification. So these individual experts, their accuracy rating was 96.6, which was a whole percentage lower than the citizens classifying these. So as found in many other projects, citizen science accuracy differed by species. So a subset of species was perfectly classified regardless of how many times it appeared in the data set. And these species tended to be visually striking, such as a giraffe or a male lion. And so it was clearly identifiable even to inexperienced volunteers. So the key to their success, though, was really multiple classifiers for each image. So the images achieved approximately 90% accuracy at 5 classifiers, and then it went up to 95% if 10 people looked at it. And then it approached that 98% after they had 20 classifiers looking at each image. So by just sending images to 10 volunteers instead of 1, it increased the accuracy from 85 to 95%. So this example is really a great one to use for researchers who, have concerns about the public being able to understand their research. Not only, I don't think that they would read this entire article, but really talking about, that's how they kind of get around the accuracy issue, is by having multiple people look at the same picture. And, the whole is going to be a little bit smarter than any single person is on these. So that was kind of my quick and dirty intro and just some experiences that I went to. And I do have a lot of resources to different sites, including Zooniverse and SciStarter. But I wanted to open up the floor and really hear what other people's experiences were. And I want advice from my peers. And so, and to answer any questions that you guys have. So what concerns have y'all heard? I mean, have there been other ones other than, yes, crowdsourcing accuracy? That's correct.
If you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat and then we can talk from there. Megan, do you have any advice for someone who wants to do more of an extracurricular or club activity rather than as an academic project?
Oh my gosh. Well, just starting, with, let's see, actually I can share that site. Hang on, new share. So, and I'll show y'all SciStarter. So SciStarter, and this is one that, the one example I showed, which there are tons of them, how she went through and picked a project. And this is also the site that I used to, with the Girl Scout troops, where they can go through and you can limit these projects to, hey, well, I just want to do this on my lunch break. And you can say, okay, so it's going to be something where you can just sit for a few minutes, that it's not going to take a big time commitment. And then you can go through, and like me, I can say, I'm obsessed with animals. I want to do that project. And since we're all quarantined, I want to do something that I can do online. And, if you have children with you, you can limit this and you can use this to find projects. And like this one, the Snapshot Safari, I think this one might link out to Zooniverse. Cedar Creek is also a big one that does camera traps that I've gone through. And the camera trap ones are really good ones that you can sit for a few minutes and just classify what you can until you have to I don't deal with children. Or you can have the children do while you're cooking dinner is a great thing also. So SciStarter is definitely a great place to start because it does have so many projects indexed in it. I lost all of my windows now. Awesome. Paige, did you organize questions? Do you have them?
So I did ask, it looks like Danny or David, I'm sorry, I can't see part of your name. If you could, Danny, could you answer me a little bit more about your IRB question, and then we could answer that. And then let's see, Paige Mann is asking, as faculty struggle to reorient their courses to online teaching, do you see citizen science projects being a viable way to provide an alternate curriculum?
Yes, definitely. And that's why, and I actually, wanted to hear thoughts from other people as well, because my colleagues were interested in, oh my gosh, well, what projects, as faculty are having a scramble to get their classes online, what projects can they kind of use right now? And that's a big part of this. I mean, to be able to suggest projects to faculty, you really have to be familiar with what types of projects are out there. So definitely take some work time to play on SciStarter and play with some of these projects so you're familiar with how they work. And that way when a professor has a question about, hey, I have this issue in my class, you'll be familiar with what projects would kind of fit that bill.
Is there a place people can look up a timeline for a project, Megan, and see, okay, this is going to be a viable option. I'm going to adapt my class for online for a year, say, and we're going to have 2 classes work on this project. Is there details about that you can find on either SciStarter or EcoFinder, etc.?
Yeah, so I know on Zooniverse, and I'll just go on there. It shows you kind of what percentage of the project is completed. So like this one, it says it's 2% complete. And a lot of times they will, they'll have this first batch up there and they'll complete a batch and then they'll upload more pictures and kind of restart that timeline. So you can see, if the project's 98% complete, it might not be a good one to start with, to maybe find one that's just starting.
Excellent. Okay, Danny clarified his question for me on IRB. So the IRB and IACUC requirements have been typically ignored by institutions where they've not met committees. That's an answer from Julie. But Danny was asking about whether or not FERPA or IRB needed to be considered when we ask students to go out and collect this data if it's eventually going into publication of another researcher's work.
Ooh. I guess I don't have a good answer for that. I hadn't thought about it. Sorry, and now I'm trying to read like what the answer was. It sounds like you said Danny has do you have insights on this? Can you pick up your mic and talk about it? Because yeah, think about, the little critters that me and my daughters are out taking pictures of, but we're not really collecting them. So I'm not sure that iCook would care on that one. But I'm not sure.
I actually don't think participants have the ability to speak. Attendees have the ability to speak.
Right,
so, but Julie had said those requirements have been typically ignored by institutions. I know that the CITSI listserv, which I'm sure, Megan, you might be a part of, they talk about this a lot at the USDA and federal levels. So there might be information on those government websites about that. But I think the best thing is to ask, your institution and your IRB board. Right. Exactly. And ask them.
Yeah. If it's a project for their research, then it is.
Julie, I will try and find that information. We have another question. You had mentioned grants before, so it's up here in the chat real quick. keep asking your questions. You guys have really great ones. It asks, have you gotten grants to help pay for some of the equipment, like light meters for light pollution projects? And another question on top of that, are there any suggestions on where to apply for a grant?
So I so far have not, because I am still newer at this and still learning, especially, trying to get this into more of an academic atmosphere. Is, there's not as much information, but I know as far as the public libraries have gotten a lot of grants through, like, our North Carolina Arboretum that does Eco Explorer. It's sorry, words. They received a grant to start that program, and then they do give money to libraries to purchase equipment and stuff that they will be able to loan out. But I would just look, on grants.gov, I mean, you can look and just search for citizen science, or, when you are really public participation, or any grants that are really involved with kind of educating the public about, having a science literate public is the big thing that gets a lot of money from, different science. Oh my gosh, why can I not think of NSF? Oh my gosh, NSF does tons of grants for this, and I think a lot of it is stuff that's related around educating the public on and getting them involved in scientific research. Oh, and I'm sorry, I'm supposed to let Paige. I see questions.
Oh, that's okay. If you see one, I'm trying to.
But I don't want to miss any. I feel like you have a list or something.
Did you have any other examples of existing projects that you've incorporated into a course?
Yeah, so there are a lot of examples. If you, just look in your library catalog for citizen science and undergraduate courses, you can kind of start combing through those to see which ones, have already been published. So that's really, I read a lot of those, and I have an alert set up to send me any new ones that pop up. But yeah, and that's the big thing, is just kind of educating yourself and looking at these to see how people can incorporate these.
And a follow-up from Melissa, you mean in the literature you've I'm assuming, like, she's asking if you have an RSS feed.
Yeah, well, I have a Scopus alert set up.
Scopus.
Yeah, so I look at the published ones. I know with a lot of these projects, so they usually have some educational materials kind of attached to them. So I think on citizenscience.gov, they have a lot of that educational material there too for people to use.
And I did put the link to citizenscience.gov. Other people are putting really helpful links. The chat does get recorded, I believe, in a Zoom webinar session. So if you have that, if not, there's a save chat button at the bottom of your chat screen. Let's see, what else? More questions on grants. Someone mentioned that NASA and other, larger government organizations or private organizations have their own grant websites. Let's see. Some people mention IMLS, of course, NLM. Let's see here. Megan, here's another one. Are there examples of universities partnering with elementary or middle schoolers on citizen science projects? Or maybe a broader question is, do you think that maybe in a non-major biology course, there would be buy-in for students to interact with even more of the public outside of their classroom in these projects?
Right. I'm sure there are. I don't know of any off the top of my head, because I know a lot of universities, like even NC State, they have a really big citizen science buy-in on their university, and a lot of projects, and most of these projects are kind of aimed towards elementary or middle schoolers. It's things that they can do, and that's what, a lot of projects and a lot of stuff that I talk about even with my children's teachers, their science teachers in middle and elementary school, is, hey, there's these projects, what can we do? And, even though they're kind of created at this university level, most of them are, since they're for such a broad range of participants, most of them can be done by K through 12 participants. Does that answer your question? Oh, I hate that everybody's muted.
We live in a silent world now. Yes.
I don't know. I don't like it.
Let's see.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, Dan. Thank you for mentioning that. I completely forgot. Yes, April is Citizen Science Month. There is so much extra stuff going on, and I meant to make a slide of the hashtag that's going around, and I did ask to do this webinar on Earth Day because Earth Day is coming up next week, and it's the 50th anniversary. So I know there's a lot of projects that are kind of circling around Earth Day and Citizen Science Month. So it's a really great time to get into it because there's a lot of interesting projects out there.
Megan, question about scale. How big do you think the class, do you think that it can go on an individual researcher level if we're working with a student one-on-one, or do you think that this can scale up to even, let's say, a 200 student section of a biology course, for example?
Yeah.
Have you played with scale at all in this?
One of the examples that I actually ended up throwing out because I didn't want me to lecture at people for too long was a biology class that had, it was 200 students. And this, let me see, actually I'll find it real quick and I can put a link to that one in the chat. Yeah, because this professor actually did it over several semesters of a class of 200 students. So it was a really, it's a really good example. Let me see if I can find that real quick.
And I am working to compile these links in the chat. So if you have links, please include them.
Oh no, it's gone. Hang on, I think I deleted that link once I was like, I'm not going to use this one. Now I'm trying to remember details so I would be able to find it again. And that is not happening. Okay, I'm so sorry. There is one. There is a, I'm trying to think of what that one about. I think it had to do with amphibians and roads or something like that, that a biology class of over 200 students did. So again, if you search in Scopus or your library catalog, just kind of looking for that undergraduate and citizen science would be helpful.
Let's see, other, oh, did you find it?
Is at ASU. Okay,
yeah.
ASU has a lot of people working on this, and Dan probably knows more than, I'm sure he does, knows more than I do about this, and I would love to, yes, hear the same type project from him, the same type presentation. Sorry to call you out. I recognize your name.
So Dan's saying that at ASU, they're working to include micro-credentials, which we know are gaining popularity in libraries for information literacy, but why not science literacy too? So that's really neat. We got another post for a new citizen science project that's been revamped for COVID-19 restrictions, keeping that social distance. We have another question. How as a librarian can I support a faculty member who's already using a citizen science project in their course? How can I best support the faculty and my students?
Oh my gosh, beg them to write about it and publish it so we can all, they can lead by example. But I mean, I'd say participate in the project. And then, so one of the professor that I'm working on with the camera track data, I talked to him about the bio for non-majors and how they were wanting to incorporate a citizen science project. And so they're wanting to use the project whenever we get it created, but now COVID, so we'll start back again in the fall. But as soon as that project is created, that's the one that they want to use for the biology for non-majors class. So again, yeah, just kind of being familiar with their project and talking to others about it.
And even maybe supplementing, as you had said, with the library, the zoom lenses for a camera, maybe seeing if there's something the library can have, or
yeah.
Was there a process for you in acquiring equipment, or have you acquired equipment through the library for a project?
So we are just now. I'm looking at different lenses because I have one that I just for personal use. And so I've sent a couple of suggestions to this faculty member, and he's wanting to have them ordered and ready for fall, which we're going to do we already have technology checkout at our library. So we're just going to incorporate it into that system where they'll do a 7-day checkout. That way it's available to everybody. And we're looking at, for now, I think just starting with 30 of the lenses and just see how that goes. And the one that I have is decently cheap, so it's not a big deal. And then I'm lucky that my supervisor is super supportive and wants them available to her as well. So she's like, yes, we will buy those.
Any other questions? Go ahead and put those in the chat. Let's see. Some people are talking about bringing guest speakers to either public libraries or academic libraries. Let's see.
Oh, Dan, are you next week? You're trying to do a webinar sampler, or you are doing a webinar? You are, but I haven't put all the pieces together. Oh, well, I'll keep an eye out for that one. Is it open to everybody or just you guys?
Trying to track down the listserv name for the citizen science discussion list here. There it is. Just ASU? No. Well, let us know how it goes.
I know, right? If there's a recording, send it out.
Let's see. The only other question I had that I had asked you prior to this session is if you had heard of the movement of calling it community science rather than citizen science. And you had mentioned a bit about inclusivity and bringing women, lower socioeconomic people into the citizen science initiative. So can you speak any more to how citizen science is becoming more inclusive, or the positive benefits of being inclusive in citizen science?
Well, I actually hadn't heard yet that people have been leaning towards community science. But since you had mentioned that right before I started talking, then every time I said citizen science, I'm like, oh, I mean, community science. Because you're right. I mean, that does add to that inclusivity, and it is already, again, there is a lot of research about how it is getting, different groups involved in science and really opening it up to the world. And so, why not kind of make that switch before it'll, kind of be harder later. kind of thing, but I hadn't heard any news on that yet. Man, y'all have some great links in here.
Yeah, I'm trying to get them all so we can include them as an addendum to the notes of this meeting. Let's see.
Thank you.
But are there any final questions as we're approaching the 3 o'clock hour where I am in Eastern time, but the 2 o'clock hour in Central time?
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I think scaling kits for citizen science, especially in a science library or for checkout, is really going to help with engagement.
Yeah. And there's already so many opportunities in, you know, public libraries and so many things to set up, you know, like a bio blitz and things like that. I mean, I think we can do more of that in academia.
Could you talk a little bit about what those programs are for people who aren't familiar with what public libraries might be currently running that you think are adaptable to academia?
Yeah, they do have, you know, if you want to get more involved than just talking to people about this, they have kind of pre-set up projects that you can set up at your public library where, oh, and there go the dogs. Where you can host an event around your library where, you know, within a certain time period, everybody will come out and kind of have the same goal, and there's somebody that has that can help you with your technology and kind of set you up. You know, if it's on, I know Eco Explorer is one in our area that does a lot of this. Well, they'll, you know, have an event out at a lake and have everybody come and kind of check in at the spot and say, okay, everybody go take pictures of ducks or, you know, whatever wildlife you can find in this area. So we can kind of really have a lot of data around this specific location. And, you know, depending on the library or the institution, you know, they might have incentives for people to come out. But the main thing is really just having kind of a hot spot for wildlife or for people to be successful with that app or with, you know, whatever program they're working on.
Okay. Well, I just want to thank you. I know we're approaching the hour, so if there aren't any last questions, I want to go ahead and thank Megan for her time and sharing her knowledge with us today. If there are any remaining questions, go ahead and throw those into the chat right now. Otherwise, again, yes, I see the thank yous coming in. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so
I will try to compile these links, and I know the slides Lauren Carlton at ACRL said that we could send those as long as well. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you.